Welcome to Ira's Everything Bagel, where I talk with intriguing people about everything, their passions, pursuits, and points of view. Now, happiness can be an elusive goal if you decide to pursue it. And there are many people who can't conceive of happiness in their lives at all and accept whatever they have. Others would like happiness, but are not sure how to achieve it, even in small doses. Well, my guest today has written a book about life and happiness. She's Emmy Award-winning producer Maria Baltazzi. Did I get it right, Maria? Baltazzi.
Yes, you did. Well
Excellent.
done.
Author of Take a Shot at Happiness, How to Write, Direct, and Produce the Life You Want. Published by Post Hill Press and available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the usual places. For everything about Maria, go to mariabaltazzi.com and you can follow her on LinkedIn and Instagram. And Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Am I going to be happy at the end of this conversation?
Yes, you're going to be very happy, or at
Okay,
least
good.
you're going to have some tools to help you out with that.
Excellent. So what possessed you to write the book? I should first, for our listeners and viewers, ask about your background so people will know why you decided to write the book, because you had an epiphany. So I'll let you do the talking and I'll stop talking.
Yeah. So I wrote the book that I wished I would have had early in my journey. And yeah, being one of the original supervising producers on Survivor, I was one of the original producers for 7 seasons, and I had a front row seat to seeing some of the best and worst of human behavior. And I always did the last episode. And so often I would be sitting in interviews, especially towards the end, with the Survivor contestants, and they would be saying, well, this isn't really me. This is me playing a game. And of course it's you. Those are your words and actions. It's what I came to realize is that you have not, the contestants had not been put on a remote island without their creature comforts, without their family and friends around them, vying for life-changing money to really know how they would behave in that situation. And so I realized we all have untapped potential that we don't fully understand until it's either tested, like the Survivor contestants, or you explore it. And that's what my experience on Survivor did. It was a catalyst for me to explore my happiness. And so I took that as partial inspiration to create a guide to happiness in a companion app that goes with the book.
When you decided to write the book, did you do research outside of your own epiphany and experiences on Survivor? Did you look to certain quote unquote experts, or did you do some reading in various forms of happiness, self-esteem, etc.?
Oh, it was quite a journey. I left the show and I went on to do other shows, and I started to notice that other people's stuff was becoming my stuff. I was taking on just too much things emotionally. And I realized that it was not healthy for me and it was not sustainable. And when you produce television, whether it's a large scale show like Survivor, where it's a team of hundreds, or you are with a small group of a cameraman, a sound guy, and an assistant, often I'm in remote locations. And whether it's large or small, you're responsible for these people. You're responsible for their well-being. You're responsible for their life. Some of these places that I shoot in they're dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so I was noticing that I was, if you will, caring too much, and it was just impacting me. And so that, on top of having that front row seat to looking at human behavior through my time at Survivor, it was both a catalyst for me to start looking at my life and what was working for me, what was negative, what was unproductive. And eventually I qualified what made me happier. Things like having my faith, having loving relationships, having health in mind, body, and spirit. And so I qualified these for myself. And then I researched to see if there was science to back up what I was intuitively feeling and experiencing. And that became the Happiness Essentials, which are my chapters in my book. So yeah, my book came out of my experience. And yes, I read quite a bit. I did a lot of coursework. I got certifications. I eventually got a PhD in conscious living. So I have studied and practiced happiness, the virtues and qualities of happy people, the habits and mindfulness. And where I began my journey, and you're always on your journey, where life ebbs and flows and we change as we mature. So where I started my journey and where I am today is 180 degrees, and it's all in my book.
When you were producing, though, that's a stressful job, number one. And as you said, you're in exotic and in some cases dangerous locales. I'm surprised that you didn't look at that and go, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Because I mean, you talked about faith and just a moment ago. Did you do some soul searching while you were in these seasons of Survivor and go, what in the world am I doing here, being responsible for all these people and under the pressure of producing a television show at a network level? Did that all come together at one time?
Well, oddly, I like it.
Interesting.
I like being in remote places. I like going where other people aren't often going to, or if ever. I really like that adventure. It's just part of my DNA.
But it's not everybody's, right?
No, it is
Right.
not everybody's, and I recognize that. And have I had moments of fear? 100%. Yeah. You do a story about African lions and you think you're following a pride of lions that are eight lions throughout the night, only to come to first daylight to realize there was another lion around. And you could have, yeah, you go at some point, you have to get out of the vehicle to go to the bathroom and do things like that. And who knows what could have happened? I've been charged by elephants. I've been very close to within touching distance of cheetahs that were feasting on a kill. So yes,
Mm.
it can be very scary, but at the same time, it can also be such an adrenaline rush. So I like that adventure.
When you were, this is really a side note, but it's just the way my mind works sometimes. When you were in the middle of nowhere, exotic and dangerous locales, did you have your own trailer since you're the producer? Or did you? No, you were in the rough, so to speak.
Yes. So when it comes to, and every show is different. And also Survivor has evolved now. Now it's in its 45th season, going
Amazing.
into its 46th season. And when we did the very first season of Survivor on the island of Borneo, they built makeshift huts for the producers to live in. I mean, very, very basic. It was just enough to have shelter, to have a place to wash ourselves and to sleep. There was nothing fancy about it. And then in Australia season 2 and Africa season 3, we were in tents. We created our own tent city. And that it was often the case on some of the other shows that I did, is that we would create our tent city for production. And yes, there were other productions where you did stay in a really nice hotel. So it depended on the production, the circumstance of the production, and the budget.
When you were working on the book, was it after you finished all those seasons, or was it during you were taking notes, perhaps, and had the idea, the epiphany, as you mentioned earlier? Or did you wait till after production stopped and then you said, you know what, I'm going to research this. I'm going for my PhD. I'm going to write this book and turn it into an app, etc.
The writing of the book evolved over time. So Survivor was a catalyst for me to look at my behavior. You know, I had a front row seat to the best and the worst of human behavior, which was a catalyst for me to do an inward turn to look at my behavior.
So
And
wait, I want to interrupt you. What was your worst behavior that you saw in yourself, and what was the best behavior? Because I know you were watching human behavior under extreme conditions, but how about for yourself, if you want to share, what you thought was the worst that you were capable of and the best that you were capable of, and did you integrate that into the book?
yes, and yes. I have I have a very strong personality, and I can be very righteous about my opinion on something. And I think that there have been times, well, I know that there have been times during production, whether it was on Survivor or other productions, they're all stressful in their own way, where I was just too adamant about what I wanted. As a leader, as someone who is running a show, uh, you are the vision. You are the one who is guiding everybody. You're telling people, what is the story? What are the stories you follow? You're following. So you have to give a lot of guidance, but you're also working with other creative people, and they have their vision depending on what their expertise is, whether they are someone who deals with the photography or the lighting or the editing. And sometimes you have creative differences, and I haven't not always been the easiest person to deal with when I wanted things as I wanted them. And then there are other times when, and this was part of what I discovered for myself in terms of not being sustainable emotionally, is that I cared so much. So if somebody was cold, I would literally give them the shirt off my back. I would just give them stuff. One of the examples in going back to Survivor, since that's something that is a common reference point, is I would show up I would show up on the beaches with the very first cruise and go back to our base camp with the very last cruise more times than not. And it's because I was concerned about the welfare of the Survivor contestants. Not that I could do anything. I couldn't give them food. I couldn't fix their shelter, but I could be there in case something happened to one of them. So I took that seriously. So I feel like that was a that was a good quality.
No,
Just
absolutely, absolutely.
that care. And the contestants knew that. I did have a reputation amongst the contestants that I was the one who cared. I was the one who would show humanity. Not
Well,
that I'm saying
I
that
can
the other producers didn't.
right.
I don't want to give that impression,
No,
but
but it is a challenge because if you're on the other side of the camera, there has to be some distance in order for you to professionally produce the show and direct the show and film the show and or tape the show and all of that. So I can see where that dilemma comes in, where some people on the crew or even other producers, directors are not going to get too close to the contestants because that doesn't give them the objective eye that they need for the show.
well,
But
and legally you can't,
right.
because they're vying for $1 million. You, whether as a producer in the way you are framing your questions, or the cameraman, how they're interacting with the contestants. You know, sometimes the sound guy, when you're going to tribal council, they have to mic you up, things like that. Whatever that interaction is, you have to be very mindful of it, because you could be accused of affecting someone's game.
Yeah.
So I took the fly on the wall quite seriously when I was producing the show.
But they still knew
And
that, but they still knew that you were the one that cared as to other people on the crew, because you
right.
obviously, yeah, you projected that. I just want to mention before we get into the book itself that you have a background, you have an MFA in film from Art Center College of Design, and then a PhD in conscious centered living from the University of Sedona. And that's interesting. I didn't realize they had a universe. I know they had the red rocks out there and the pink Jeeps, but I didn't realize they had the college there too, or the university there too.
Yeah.
When you were putting the book together, how did you decide to structure it? Because I know you have 8 happiness essentials, and there are other elements of the book. So how did you decide, once you did your additional research, how did you format, that might be the better term? How did you decide to format the book?
Well, I looked at my book, I looked at the chapters like I would an episode,
Oh,
creating an
okay.
episodic series. So when you go through my book, you will notice that every chapter, every happiness essential begins the same way. There is an overview of that chapter, whether it's faith or love. And then there are 8 points, and I use the number 8 intentionally. If you turn it on its side, it's infinity. So
Very nice.
you're always changing. And then at the end of each one of those 8, what I call them snapshots, I use photography terminology. You know, take a shot of happiness. It's both.
Photo ops and all of that.
Right, exactly. It's both a call to action as well as what you are doing throughout the journey in my book. So after each snapshot, then I have a centering thought and an affirmation. So when you later do the photo ops and especially the journaling, the action opportunities, you use those specific centering thoughts and affirmations to get you into writing your thoughts about that particular action, that particular bullet point, that snapshot. And then I come to the end of it, of that happiness chapter, and then I give a big picture. And I give a big picture, and then I give the assignments. So everything is laid out, uh, you know, like it was an episode. You know how it's going to begin, you know you're going to find in the center, and you know how it's going to end each chapter.
I like that. So you took your own production background and put it into the book in terms of how you structured it. When you were
Right.
doing your research for the book and you had the epiphany, as we mentioned earlier, I'm sure you saw there were probably, who knows at this point, thousands of books on happiness, self-realization, reflection, etc. So you had to think through how best to approach the subject and make it different from all those other books and all those other articles and journals, etc. Was there one thing that you thought of that would point the way, and what would that?
Yes. And I gave a lot of thought for exactly what you said. How was my book going to be differentiated from the other happiness book? It's creativity. I also wanted to write a book, even though I have a degree. I also wanted to create a book that was relevant to my background, that people would understand, you know, the credibility that I was writing my book with. It's coming from a creative background, and using a creative approach, and wanting it to make learning happiness, learning the virtues and qualities and habits of happy people. I wanted to make that be something that was fun and accessible, because you tend to do the things that you enjoy, you gravitate towards that. And for me, in my journey, using my cell phone taking photos of things that brought me joy, that gave me a moment of peace and reflection, what was and has been huge. For almost 5 years, every day, I would take a photo of one thing that brought me happiness. So even if I was having a chaotic, upset day, I could just focus on one thing that would give me peace for that moment during that day. And so I took that forward in a very significant way into my book. So uh, taking photographs, they're guided, they're prompted photographs that are specific to love or to faith or to gratitude. So you understand how this fits into your happiness framework, not mine, but yours, so that you're making it specific to you through the images that you take that are meaningful to you, and then journaling about that. So it takes the intellectual thoughts that you are reading about, the intellectual thoughts about happiness that you are reading about, takes them from your head and it brings it into your heart. You integrate it. And the more you integrate it, the more you see the benefits, you start to form the habit, you start to create a positive neural pathway in your brain towards the good, and it becomes your way of being. And that is exactly what has happened to me.
When you mentioned about using your phone, and it's a great idea to record and to take pictures of one thing a day that brought you joy or happiness, did you ever look at it and say to yourself, okay, half of what I'm taking pictures of are inanimate objects and the other half are of people? In other words, that what sparked joy in you, would it be in one case maybe a bowl of fruit that looks really great because you're hungry, or was it a person that just expressed something that you caught with your camera or your phone?
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, because different things trigger happiness. And then the other beautiful thing about taking images and images within the framework of understanding your happiness. I call myself a happiness explorer, one who seeks to better understand themselves and what makes them happy, what makes you happy. And that's what I'm encouraging readers to be. Go explore. We learn to be doctors and lawyers and filmmakers, but we're not taught how to live well. And that's what the intention of my book is to give that guidance in a way that helps you understand and seek out positive moments throughout your day. And when done consistently over time, it reshapes your well-being.
Can't you mention creativity? I'm wondering, can creative people, because I know a lot of creative people, and a lot of them don't know the concept of happiness because it's just maybe it goes with the territory. Some are neurotic, some are depressed. Or can you be creative? And obviously, the answer in your book is yes. Can you be creative and happy at the same time?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I am. And we come into the world with a happiness set point. And this is something that Sonia Lubomirsky, who is a well-known happiness researcher out of UC Riverside, she put forth the concept of the happiness set point and describes it in the shape of a pie, where 50% is defined by your DNA, what you come into the world with from your parents. And then 10% is your life circumstance. And then 40% is what you do, your intentional activities, your choice to be happy. And my feeling is that when you choose to be happy and you back it up by intentional activity done consistently, you impact your life circumstance. So that 40% actually expands. And the study of epigenetics says, and I'm paraphrasing, that you have to be in a certain environment. Just because you are predisposed to something doesn't mean that will be so for you. You have to be in the right environment for those genes to fire off. So there is a lot that you can have in your control. So even if you are a crabby creative person, you can still make that your choice and your intention and do something about it to shift. People often ask me, what is the key to happiness? It's choice. And then backing it up by doing something, just saying, oh, I want to be happy. We all want to be happy. But you
Action.
have to do something about it. If you just talk about it, then you're just dreaming, you're just wishing. The thing that I'd like people to know above and beyond that happiness is a choice is that happiness is another word for resilience. In that you learn the virtues and qualities and habits of happy people so you can recognize challenging times sooner, navigate them. You'll have the emotional tools to navigate them better and get on the other side of these challenges more emotionally intact. And that's what my book and app helps readers do.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guest has been Emmy Award winning producer Maria Baltazzi, and that's not easy to say, author of Take a Shot at Happiness, How to Write, Direct, and Produce the Life You Want. It's published by Post Hill Press, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes, and Noble, and all the usual places. And for everything about Maria, you can go to mariabaltazzi.com, and you can follow her on LinkedIn and Instagram. And Maria, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a treat.
Thank you. And join us every Thursday for a new schmear on Ira's Everything Bagel.